Do you know the feeling when your child says something that's a thing you normally say, like, in any case, and coming out of their little mouth, it sounds so cute. And then you also know the feeling where they say something that you normally say that's not so cute coming out of their mouth, like maybe it's a little judgmental? Our kids mirror us, and if we want to teach them empathy, we need to develop our own empathy. Empathy has declined 50% since the 80s and 90s, and narcissism has increased 200%. So, if you were born somewhere in the 80s and 90s, like a lot of millennials are, then you may need to do some work on your own empathy skills in order to help model that for your children. Welcome to Worldly Families. I'm Justine Janae. Traveling to over 40 countries and living abroad has opened my eyes to new ways of being and doing. I'm all about helping you expand your horizons so you can live and parent more intentionally and more joyfully. In this video, we'll be diving into Chapter 5 of The Danish Way of Parenting by Jessica Joelle Alexander and Iben Dissing Sandal. Chapter 5 is called E is for Empathy. Here are the 7 takeaways from this chapter. 1. Understand your empathic style. As I mentioned, we need to do the self-work, the inner work, and have the self-awareness to increase our own empathy skills, which we may not have been taught in school or by our parents. In the book, they list some questions to think about that I'll read verbatim. What does empathy mean for me? What does empathy mean for my partner? Where do we agree and disagree? What are our values to the core? How judgmental am I of myself and others? How judgmental is my partner? How does our language style reflect this? How can I change my language style to reflect a more empathic style with less judgment? Try listening to yourself and see the types of things that you typically say. If you're talking about people, is it positive, negative, or neutral? And see if you can try and shift that narrative to be more about understanding the other person and less about judging them. 2. Understand others. I live by this phrase, seek to understand. If you really consciously put an effort into practicing understanding others, where they're coming from, the perspective that they have, the life experiences that led them to where they are now, doing and saying the things that they're doing and saying, you will sometimes be amazed at how much you actually are judging and shaming in your mind, even if you're not saying it out loud. And the thing is, everybody can pick up on that vibe. Try putting yourself in others' shoes more often. It's a great thing to model for your kids. 3. Notice and identify emotions. You can even turn this one into a fun little game with your kids where you're just noticing, what is that person feeling? Why do you think they're feeling that? What are you feeling? Why do you think you're feeling that? What do you think I'm feeling? Why do you think I'm feeling that? And it really helps to get out of the judgment and the shoulding. She shouldn't be angry, and more, why might she be angry? 4. Read, read, read. Reading has been scientifically shown in a number of studies to increase empathy in kids. It's especially important to read stories that encompass all emotions, positive, negative, uncomfortable, just to get really real about what the human experience can be like. And it gives a safe place to talk about these uncomfortable emotions so that when your kids encounter them in real life, they've encountered them before in a way and they understand what the emotion is and maybe how to cope with it. If you can, try to read books from other countries all around the world, not just from American culture, because we tend to have these very happy endings and that is not the reality. So if you can read some Danish fairy tales, those tend to have somewhat tragic endings, and oddly, kids sometimes even prefer those because they can feel the authenticity in it. 5. Improve meaningful relationships. Having fractured relationships in your life can actually cause psychological damage over time. So use some empathy to repair some of those relationships and strengthen your bond and connection with others. Empathy and forgiveness actually light up the same part of our brain. So as we develop our empathy, it becomes easier to forgive. Those connections with friends and family and colleagues, when they get really deep and meaningful, that is the greatest indicator of a very happy life. 6, be vulnerable. Sometimes we put up walls to protect ourselves, but those walls are actually preventing us from connecting with others, and connection is the key to happiness. So let down your walls, let others in, and really try and do a good job of listening, active listening in turn. This isn't covered in the Danish Way of Parenting, but I highly recommend Nonviolent Communication. It's a great book about active listening and meeting everybody's needs in a conflict or any kind of communication situation. I'll link to that in the description below as well. When you're being vulnerable and when you're sharing and another person is sharing with you, remember to stay curious, to seek to understand, and to use metaphors to try to explain what you're trying to convey in a way that's very caring. 7, seek empathy in others. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So choose wisely. Choose people who are on a path to greater empathy and greater kindness. It will rub off and you will find yourselves in conversations that are really enriching, that are about ideas and potential and not about people and judgment. It's really important to surround yourself with a like-minded community, especially as new parents. They can benefit the most from this kind of support. This isn't in the book, but I really recommend looking into Brené Borwn's work on emotions. Specifically, Atlas of the Heart is her newest HBO special that just came out based on her book, Atlas of the Heart, where it literally takes you through all of the human emotions and explains what they are so that you understand all the different degrees and shades of emotion. Because the way that we label something actually impacts the way that we feel it. The average American, according to Brené Borwn, can only list 3 basic emotions: anger, happiness, and sadness. And the problem is when we try and squash all of the great variety of potential emotions into those 3 categories, we're losing a lot of nuance in what's really going on in our internal experience. So it's important to have a rich emotional vocabulary to be able to even describe to ourselves in our own minds what we're experiencing and label it correctly. I'll link to that book in the description below. If you're picking up what I'm throwing down, please subscribe and click the bell to be notified every time I release a new video. I'd also really love it if you drop in the comments which tip resonated the most for you, and if you have any more tips for developing your empathy and your kids' empathy. Make it a great day, and I will see you in the next video.